Welcome to the Saturday HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. Please sit back, relax, and join Brad Epstein, Jonathan Broderick, and Viana Barbu for an hour of entertaining information about HOAs and HOA law on AM 1380, The Answer.
Well, we hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving holiday with their family and friends. A cool, frosty morning in the Sacramento region, and I almost was late because someone parked in my parking stall and was a nuisance, and I had to scrape ice off of my windshield. Could you believe that?
Oh, what a great lead-in to what we're going to talk about today, right?
I guess that's it, right? Nuisances?
Yeah, we're going to actually go through a case study. It's going to be a factual scenario similar to what a lot of board members and managers go through all the time. We're going to talk about how to solve that.
The real deal, then. A real case.
Right.
Awesome. So we're the Saturday HOA Brunch, and of course, we take no time off as we discuss community associations every Saturday in the illustrious, warm, and cozy 1380 studios.
Right. Our listeners would not let us off the hook. They're looking for some knowledge. Board members and managers looking to do their job better.
And they're all huddled in their, great homes and townhomes and condominiums, and they're getting ready to kick off another exciting year in their community association, right? The year's coming to an end.
Yeah, don't push us all the way to the end of the year yet, Jonathan.
All right. So if somebody wants to get a hold of us, give us a call, tell us how they cook their turkey or what's going on in their community association. Give us a call, 888-923-1380. That's 888-923-1380. And you can join in on the first Thanksgiving edition of the Saturday HOA Brunch.
Right. And some of our listeners let me know over the week from last week's show. They said, hey, you didn't let us know where Dion Stein was from, where that accent was from.
Frank guessed. He said New Zealand. But no, where is it from?
No, South Africa.
South African. Yep, good old Dion Stein. Hopefully he's having a good time with his family. I think he's going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame or something. He was going to Cincinnati, Ohio or something to visit family.
Ohio? He's going to Ohio.
Ohio.
Yes.
Excellent. So, I guess we better get into this case, right? A real case.
That's right.
Cold, hard facts.
So the cold, hard facts are this, and I'm sure many of you board members and managers have heard this before. You have an owner, and the owner is failing to do a couple of different things. Number one, the owner is failing to repair some broken window screens. Okay, now that's not such a big deal, right?
Right. I'm not thinking that there should be very much drama in the board meeting in regards to that situation.
However, the owner's tenants, right, they are doing, number one.
Oh, probably some college kids partying or something, right? Right. In a condo.
Right. Periodic loud parties. Too late, too loud, too often.
Good music, DJ, radio, what?
Terrible music.
Okay.
And also, the tenant is parking the cars in the driveway, and that's in violation of this imaginary association CC&Rs.
Real? I saw there was a case where an association actually towed a gentleman, this was last year, towed his brand new 2015 Toyota Tundra out of the driveway because in their governing documents it says no vehicles. They must be parked in the garage.
Towing, yeah. We're going to talk about the remedies to address this factual situation.
So they're having loud parties. They're parking in their driveway, right? Multiple vehicles.
Right, because the garage is filled with storage.
Okay, so they're hoarders too. Or maybe that's just where they keep all the kegs for the parties.
Right.
But anyways, and all the screens, right? The exterior screens on the home, they're just destroyed and they're not doing their maintenance.
Right, so we have people parking. What are we missing?
P cubed. People. Oh, what do they have? Some pets?
Yeah,
right?
They have a dog.
Let me guess. They have pit bull fights in their backyard every week.
No, not quite. Their tenants are allowing the dog to roam without a leash.
That's illegal, right?
Not good. Not good. So,
right.
To summarize, again, the factual scenario we're going to go over today.
It's a case.
It's a case study, right? Owners failing to repair the broken window screens. The owner's tenants, number one, parking cars in the driveway because storage in the garage. Number two, allowing his dog to roam without a leash. And number three, has periodic loud parties.
Well, if the board of directors ought to just lock him up and throw away the key. So that sounds like to me.
Yeah, 888-923-1380. There's not going to be anyone else in the studio other than Jonathan, me, Brad, Frank Jolly.
He's in the back. He's got about 5 things going on back there, but he's here.
Viana Barbu again is out, and again our listeners said, hey, you got to mention Viana just because she's on the show. She's the spark that lights the fire of your show.
And plus we added her to the rejoiner now, so she's officially here even though she's not here.
Oh, wow. That's stretching. That's a big stretch.
All right, what's the name of this case? I want to hear about people, pets, and parking and all of this nuisances, and what was the big thing that came out of this?
Now, this is an imaginary case. Jonathan,
All
what
right.
we're going to do is we're going to walk through it, and we're going to talk about solving it. So, number one, to solve it, we have to know whether there's actually a governing document provision being broken. Just because you don't like how an owner is behaving or the tenants are behaving, if they're not breaking a rule, if they're not breaking a
You
governing
can't
document
enforce
provision,
anything.
then what? Exactly. And once you get past that, you want to figure out, what do you really want out of this? What kind of remedy are you looking for? What kind of remedies can you get? And with that, you look to the governing documents and the law.
And most of the time, as our listeners would know that listen, and community managers, most of the time, it's not monetary. The boards don't necessarily want to come right out at you and just, we'll get a Star Wars theme because it's coming out with a lightsaber, right? And just throw you a big bill and a fine.
Right. Boards are not looking to make money off of violating owners. They want the violations solved. They want the dispute to be resolved. They want peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Right. People, pets, and parking, if you can solve all that, you have peace.
You think so?
And so if you have a governing document provision being broken, you figure out what you want. Now you have to adhere to the
But there's
procedures.
certain ramifications. There's certain things that they can't go above and beyond. I mean, the penalties are stated in the governing documents.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So, I mean,
You're
there's
on remedies. You're saying, what can you get out of it? It's not just what you want out of it.
So a
it's what
fine
you can
schedule,
get out of
right?
it.
A fine schedule has to be written down. You can't just come out of the blue and go, you know what? We don't like these kids. We hate the music that they're playing. Their dogs are we're going to fine them $1,500 and call it a day. You can't do that.
You can't do
There's a fine schedule.
Right.
There's certain steps that have to be taken.
That's the third part of what we're going to talk about today. First is there a governing document provision being broken? Number two, what do you want? Can you get out of it to solve it? And number three is, what are the procedures that you, as a manager and a board member, must adhere in order to reach those remedies?
I'm writing this all down. It's great information.
Okay, if you'd like to join the conversation or add a dispute or violations that you're trying to resolve, it's 888-923-1380. Okay, so the owner's failing to repair broken windows and screens. The owner's tenant is parking cars in the driveway, storage in the garage, and allows his dogs to roam without a leash, and has periodic loud parties. Okay, so why don't we break it down? Which one do you want to go with first? Which of those violations? We have 4 violations, right?
Yeah, all right. I'm thinking maybe we should go with party. Well, party. That's the one we're going to start with.
We're going to go with the party. So most association CCNRs don't say...
have a party provision.
Right. There's not a party provision. You cannot have a party. It would be vague and probably not enforceable. But what they do have is the catch-all. Activities which are nuisances or which cause unreasonable embarrassment, disturbance, or annoyance to residents of the development. They interfere with residents' use and enjoyment of the lots. They are prohibited. That's a typical, Jonathan, that's a typical provision in CCNRs that are really old, say from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way to today.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a useful provision in that it says no offensive misconduct, no nuisance, no unreasonable disturbances are allowed in associations, and it's in almost any kind of set of CCNRs, which reminds me, a lot of CCNRs are being revised in the last couple of years. I think a lot of boards and managers are waiting till after the recession, and so what you can do is you can enable the association to have more strength.
Well, and there's always the new legislation that we discuss and talk about that you kind of have to look at your governing documents,
right.
And you've got to kind of reshape them for the future, right?
Right.
It's like the new maintenance that's going to be coming out in 2017 and
the new maintenance allocation obligations,
all kinds of stuff.
Right. So we do want to remind everyone of that because we're going to be harping on that one till 2017 when all the association CC&R should be up to snuff with respect to the exclusive use common areas.
But we're not going to talk about it every show, every Saturday next year, right?
Just on this balmy Saturday.
All right, so when we come back, I think we're going to talk about what next? Pets in communities. So we'll be back. Join us for the second segment.
If your community association has a good relationship with their current management company, you can stop listening. However, if you are struggling with your current service provider, we'd love to talk with you to see if Omni Community Management would be a good fit. Transparency, education, communication, and trust are just 4 of the qualities that set Omni apart. This is Rolf Crocker, CEO of Omni. Call us at 916-965-8964. That's 916-965-8964. Online at omni-mgt.com. That's omni-mgt.com. Omni Community Management, your friend in the community association management industry for over 20 years.
Have you ever heard of the saying, a person's home is their castle? Of course you have. But sometimes a construction defect can turn your castle into a catastrophe. If this happens to you, you need proper and professional representation. You need Angius&Terry, LLP. For over 30 years, the attorneys at Angius&Terry have been effectively serving homeowners and community associations, recovering more than $500 million on behalf of their clients. Angius&Terry strives to ensure that your construction defect claims are prosecuted in an aggressive and cost-effective manner. Angius&Terry will also continue to work with homeowners and community associations after the construction defect claims are concluded to make sure that the money received from builders is spent wisely and that your interests are protected during the repair process. Don't let a construction defect turn your castle into a catastrophe. Call Angius&Terry LLP today at 916-567-1400. That's 916-567-1400. Online at angius-terry.com. Angius&Terry LLP. Professional Parking Enforcement, or PPE, was created to provide effective parking solutions for all types of parking issues. PPE focuses on parking problems of HOAs and can quickly eliminate these problems through their system of property inspection, violation updating, ticketing, and enforcement. Contact PPE today at 702-283-0628, online at ppenv.com. PPE, promoting harmony in HOAs through parking and compliance enforcement. We take time to understand your community's needs.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We solve small problems before they become big ones.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We help make your community a better place to live.
Silver Creek Association Management.
It's what we do, because an association is more than just a bunch of homes. It's a community of people. We work with you to make better communities so homeowners can enjoy better lives.
Silver Creek Association Management. Online at sc-manage.com. That's sc-manage.com.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein, Jonathan Broderick, and Viana Barbu on AM 1380, The Answer.
Welcome back for the second segment of the Thanksgiving edition of the Saturday HOA Brunch on a very cool morning, fall morning in Sacramento. And we are talking today about the 3 Ps: people, pets, and parking. Before we get into pets, we were going to talk a little bit more about, okay, what does the board of directors do to enforce the kids that are throwing this rager every weekend in their condominium community or their townhouse or their master plan single family home community? What do they do now? So they realize there's, how do they go, well, hey, these parties are out of control?
Yeah, what board members will say is they'll say, well, how do we prove it? What's the burden of
I've heard
proof?
of board members getting video cameras out, right? Our good buddy David, he said, hey, there was a big fiesta going along, every Saturday across the street from our condominium community. I went out there with video cameras and recorded the evidence. Now, is that a safe thing to do?
I think it's a pretty good idea in that it is really prevalent. In fact, what we've been able to do last summer is when it really came out, and that is when the security guys had the chest cams.
GoPros, like the cops, they put the GoPro on their chest and they go and they walk around the community and they survey everything, and then they go, oh my God, look at there's 30 kids partying on a balcony.
The manager emailed me a couple of videos from the chest cam, and I was able to make my violation letters. And this is a step in the process.
Now, is there verbiage, though, that you looked at in the governing documents to enforce those violations?
Yeah, there's typically not a decibel limit or a hour of curfew in CC&Rs or rules.
You could have them, though, right?
And but it's up to the board of directors to make a reasonable decision as to someone's violating it based on not any particular numbers. There's nothing that says in the law of the governing documents says it has to be exact, specific. It could be a general, as long as the board of directors reasonably believes that indeed it is occurring. Too loud, too late, too often.
Parking in the fire
Right,
lanes,
parties.
things of that nature.
All right, you want to go to pets next, though?
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
so
that-
this owner is allowing his tenant to allow his dog to roam without a leash.
Oh, okay. I thought that maybe
And
he had pigs.
This could be frightening to residents. This could be.
It depends on the type
a real
of dog,
disturbance. Even small dogs, if they're off the leash, what they can do is disturb dogs who are on leashes,
Mm-hmm.
and it could cause fights, dog fights, and problems, and
nobody
scare
likes
the
those.
residents.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, if there was, say, a St. Bernard that is probably as friendly as a teddy bear roaming around in the community, and this dog that's 250 pounds on a dead sprint runs after this lady walking her
We've seen
chihuahua.
it. Yeah, we've seen it.
You're going to have some serious issues, right? Because
Right.
people,
It's a big deal.
This lady walking her chihuahua, that's probably, she feels like that's one of her children.
So the question to you, Jonathan,
Oh,
I'm going to
no.
throw you a curve. So does the Davis-Sterling Act, which we know is the law to do with community associations and only
Common interest
community
developments,
associations, does the Davis-Sterling Act address dogs off leash? Does it address pets?
I believe that the Davis-Sterling Act says that you cannot have pets off of leashes in community associations.
And you, sir, you would be slightly incorrect.
Oh,
just
does
a
it
little bit
depend
incorrect.
per association on their rules, right?
What the only aspect of pets that the Davis-Sterling Act addresses is it states that associations must allow an owner to have at least one pet. This is for CC&Rs and rules that have been in effect. It had a grandfather provision. I think it's like 10 years old, this law. So the idea is every association...
Before I was
said
even in the game, that was a real curveball.
Right, exactly. Before you got in the game, the association game. So the Davis-Sterling Act doesn't. So where do we look? How do we know whether there is a prohibition on allowing a dog to roam without a leash in the community association?
You have to look in the governing documents.
And what are the governing
Oh, the
documents?
CC&Rs, the bylaws, right?
Articles of Incorporation,
Articles of
the rules.
Incorporation, the rules.
Right. So it's a pretty typical provision. Keep your dog under control, leashed and under control in the common area.
What about cats? Do you have to have a cat on a leash? If, something... That's just a question because there's a lot of cat lovers out there.
True.
Can you just have a bunch of cats roaming around,
Is
or
it
do you got to
possible?
make sure that you got to have a cat on a leash?
Is it possible to put a cat on a leash? I actually have seen CC&Rs and rules that stated that no cats in the common area.
Wow.
In fact, one of the most famous cases is the Narstead case. California Supreme Court ruled that an association could restrict an owner from having cats at her condominium, even though the cats never left the condominium.
Interesting.
Quite. So let's go on to, we did pets, and so we're
Pets.
We're going to say that there is a rule. The owner is in violation with the dog roaming without a leash. We talked about the offensive misconduct provision, the CC&Rs, about the loud parties. Let's go to the parking, right?
You want to talk about parking now?
So
Nuisances.
So the issue, parking is really tricky. It's really tricky because you are talking about different geographic areas where the vehicles are going to be parked. Garages, driveways, common area, guest parking, and streets, which might be private
or public.
right?
Yeah, so you have to deal with knowing which falls into which parameter, right?
Exactly. And where do you look for that? Now, do you look to the Davis-Sterling Act? Question number 2 to
Google
Jonathan
Earth.
today.
No.
So this is where, we're putting you on the spot. So far, I would say that you're 0 for 1, and let's see if you can get this one. So does the Davis-Sterling Act address anyone parking in community associations? Does the Davis-Sterling Act address
Is there law?
parking?
Is there law in the Davis-Sterling Act? That's the question. Absolutely. That coincides with each association's individual parking rules.
And
That
I
you
would
can
say,
enforce violations.
put your finger on the buzzer. The answer is no.
Again, really?
I'm setting
These
you
are
up
like
today.
trick questions.
They are. I'm setting you up today. So there is the vehicle code, though, the California Vehicle Code.
Which trumps the Davis-Sterling Act.
It doesn't necessarily trump. The Davis-Sterling Act doesn't address it.
Okay.
Okay, it doesn't address
Just all this
parking.
knowledge today I'm gaining.
Right. So you go to the vehicle code if, in fact, you want to tow a vehicle. To tow a vehicle from a community association, what you need to do is you need to have the appropriate signs at the entrances and exits, or you need to put a sticker on a vehicle for 96 hours and say, we're going to tow you in 96 hours.
That's the safest bet.
You
right?
like that one, huh?
I like that one because that gives yourself, I think, the most security when you have the resident or the owner of that vehicle is going to retaliate when you say, no, we gave you 96 hours. To me, that seems like a reasonable time frame for someone to be warned that their car is going to be towed.
Yeah, that's a long time.
That is a very long time.
How long? How many? Okay, question number 3. How many days is 96 hours, Jonathan?
You're just throwing all these at me. I'm gonna say that it's 7 days. How about that?
It's 7 days. I think we need someone to call in and correct this man.
96 hours is not 7 days.
I don't think it is.
No, it's not. It's 4. Right? Go ahead. You
Okay.
got me again. I'm recovering from strep throat in my deathbed this last week.
Yeah,
so
we're just happy you're in the studio today.
Go ahead. Next curveball.
All right, so parking in associations, it is a tricky issue. You said it sounds better for an association before they tow a vehicle to wait 96 hours, put a sticker on the vehicle.
Yeah, 4 days.
And a lot of board members have come to me over the years and they've said, hey, don't we need to do that? Don't we need to give 5 days in order to tow a vehicle before we tow? And I'll say, but don't you have the signs at the entrances and exits that say parking illegally here will result in a tow? And the answer is you don't need to have both. But
one or the
sure,
other.
it is safer.
Well, there was that story that our friend Wally called in from Foster City, and someone parked in front of a garage for about 20 minutes, and this association's towing company was
Wasn't that
on it.
a 49er football player that was just doing the parking?
You jumped right in. You got all excited. So this towing company, they ran into the house to grab some items. The towing company had no idea what was going on, but they were illegally parked. They strictly enforced their parking rules. This is down in the Bay Area. Boom, towing company shows up, tows the vehicle. Out comes this 49ers lineman and his wife that's going into labor, right? And our friend Wally, who's on the board of directors, he has to throw him in the vehicle, drive him to the hospital because their vehicle got towed within 20 minutes. Now that's, parking enforcement to the T, right? If you're towing people for their 20, he said they have like a new procedure now where they'll put their hand on the hood of the vehicle and they'll see if it's still warm. Which means,
the old hand on the hood of the vehicle
right,
procedure.
And
yes.
so then what that means is they can say, hey.
Is that in the Davis-Sterling Act?
Oh, no, I don't think it is. But so that was something that they decided they needed to do more often than not to prevent vehicles being towed.
I think what you're saying is you need to be careful when it comes to towing vehicles. When associations and boards and managers tow vehicles from developments, because in my experience, towing vehicles is the one thing that will get a manager and board members into a small claims lawsuit.
Well, what would you do if your brand new BMW got towed? You'd be a little bit upset, right? If you were kind of in a gray area on where you could and couldn't park?
Exactly. So it is a lot of board members don't make that as their first choice. Exactly. So let's look at what was happening in our case study is that the tenants parking cars in the driveway and they have their garage filled with storage. That's why the tenant is parking in the driveway, because there's no room in the garage, because the tenant has filled their garage with all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. Exactly. All kinds of stuff. And so how do we know whether that's even a violation? Look to the governing document CC&Rs and the rules.
You know that I'm just kind of reminiscing over I know you said don't bring us to the end of the year yet, but our buddy Nick Berg, the president of Cityscape Management in San Francisco, he said that he's actually had issues in high rises with hoarders or people that have too much stuff in their units and it starts to spill out into the common area. So the same thing with the vehicles, right? Maybe they're hoarding in the garage, they're parking in the driveway, it's a violation?
Perhaps.
So when we get back from the break, are you going to start to tell us how and what they can do to enforce these things?
Window screens, broken window screens, and we're going to head into the remedies and go into the procedures.
And the enforcement. We'll be back.
With SRN News, I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. Parts of the central United States are experiencing everything from ice to heavy rain and flash flooding, and forecasters say it could last all weekend in some areas. In Fort Worth, Texas, Fire Department spokesman Kyle Clay says one deputy tried to rescue a 70-year-old woman whose car had been washed off the road.
She chose to get in there and try to help rescue this lady, and that water was just too powerful for both of them. And they were both washed downstream.
The deputy was later rescued. That woman, though, has not been found. So far, it's feared she's dead. Sub-zero temperatures making for some slick driving conditions in central Oklahoma. Forecaster Matthew Day at the National Weather Service.
Gotten freezing rain with accumulations up to half-inch, three-quarters inch in some places on trees and power lines.
Day says temperatures should warm a little in the southern plains today. The freeze will persist in some places. Police in Colorado Springs have a man in custody after gunfire yesterday inside a Planned Parenthood clinic led to 3 deaths, including a police officer. Colorado Springs Mayor John Southern.
The perpetrator is in custody. The situation has been resolved. There's no continuing peril to the citizens of Colorado Springs.
Police say they have yet to pinpoint a motive for the shooting. They have identified the gunman as 57-year-old Robert Louis Deere of North Carolina. As President Obama heads to Paris for the Global Climate Summit this week, top Republicans are warning his promises to cut U.S. carbon emissions will mostly be empty ones. Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe.
We're not going to adopt anything over here that is mandatory, and they're not going to try to make any effort to have something that is that would be binding.
Inhofe says a type of sweeping climate deal the president would like to achieve at that summit would be a job killer. The financial markets opened for an abbreviated session on Black Friday, saw the Dow down by 15 points. This is SRN News.
It's Black Friday savings at Roseville Auto Mall. 17 dealers, 24 brands with over 6,000 vehicles, all priced to sell. Plus, just for taking a test drive, you're entered to win $1,000 from participating dealerships only at the Roseville Auto Mall. Don't miss your chance to save hundreds, even thousands on that new car you've been looking for. And we'll even buy you lunch. Another great deal at Roseville Auto Mall. Driven to be the best. See dealer for details. The Roseville Auto Mall.
Having trouble understanding your community association's reserve study? Does your HOA's reserve study seem to be written in a strange language? Hi, I'm Robert Browning, owner of the Browning Reserve Group. At the Browning Reserve Group, we have been providing easy-to-understand reserve studies since 1999. We actually listen to our communities and help them plan for the future. Find us online at browningrg.com. That's browningrg.com, or toll free at 877-708-0600. That's 877-708-0600. Clarity from complexity. The Browning Reserve Group.
If you are a community association or manager, you know your banking relationship is vital to your success. At Sacramento Bank of Commerce, a division of Redding Bank of Commerce, our industry expertise and personal attention make that task a breeze. With our specialized banking, lockbox, online banking, and remote deposit capture, trips to the bank are no longer necessary. And Sacramento Bank of Commerce can help your communities with a loan to repair, replace, or upgrade the investment. For local decisions and in-house processing, get in touch with our team today. Call Sacramento Bank of Commerce at 916-772-0131. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Did you see the story about the Homeowners Association? I wonder what their residents think.
I don't know, but I love my condominium association. The place looks great and is well managed, and our property values are increasing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Community Associations Institute, CAI, has helped us build a great community. They have tools for safeguarding our investment, including education for our board and professional training for our manager. Just visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Okay, responsiblecommunities.com.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein, Jonathan Broderick, and Viana Barbu on AM 1380, The Answer.
Well, we're back. I had to get my calculator out for some reason. I'm having some difficulties doing simple math today, right? So what's 96 divided by 4?
24.
There you go. We got it now. We're back and dialed in. So we were talking about people, pets, parking, and all of the nuisances involved with those three, right? Those three legs that can cause rifts throughout community associations. And now, what's the remedy, right? Everybody wants to know. We're going to talk about how do you enforce it.
Well, first, before we do that,
jump back? Okay,
the 96 hours, that's for the tag on the car.
Parking, right.
Right? You could put a tag on the car for 96 hours or not end, or you have signs at the development in order to tow a vehicle. But also remember, our owner has been failing to repair the broken window screens.
Oh, that's right.
So I wanted to compare and contrast. On the one hand, the owner failing to fix something at their home, and on the other hand, allowing the tenant to do different recurring violations, recurring instances of misconduct, the parking the car in the driveway, the dog to roam, and the loud parties. So you have recurring versus the window screen is more of a continuing violation. And so this brings us to the remedies. What do you want to get out of this? And you mentioned, well, there's fines. And most board members and managers are not interested in accumulating
large fines,
the revenue of fines from owners. They want it. They just want it solved. It
causes tension, right?
It does. It does. The board of directors at associations are made up of fellow owners. They're not being paid anything. They want to make sure that there's peace and quiet at the development. And so there's different remedies. We have fines. In order to fine, like you said, and we'll just ask you again. So in order for an association to fine, must they have a fine schedule?
They should.
They must.
They must.
They must. I'm not going to give you. I can't give you.
Yeah,
full,
but I mean,
can't give you full
okay.
credit
So if
for
you
that.
have a governing documents that are still chiseled into slabs of concrete,
you mean are you saying an old set of CCNRs from the 60s? Okay.
They possibly could be lacking sufficient fee schedules, right, or fines.
Most likely, 99.9% of CCNRs lack any fine schedule. No fine schedule. There's no a set list of different fines that the board can impose on owners. For sure, that has to be in a rule. And yes, the governing document, CCNRs, they must allow for the board to adopt a rule, and you must adopt a rule in order to have a fine schedule. So in order to do a fine, in order for an association to impose a fine, there must be a fine schedule. So that's just one of several remedies. What's another one? You can suspend the rights of an owner.
So maybe the common area. Maybe you have a great gym and a pool and a barbecue outdoors and this nice clubhouse. No more. They can suspend your rights, right? To use that.
Okay, question number. Are we in question 4 or 5?
Oh, I don't know. Probably 4 or 5.
It is 4.5. The question to you, Jonathan, is can the association suspend an owner's use of all the common area?
Yes.
No,
they can't.
I don't think you've answered
Can they
any of these.
restrict? They can restrict use, right?
Well, it's a trick question. So an association's board of directors, in most cases, can suspend an owner's rights to use the recreational facilities.
Recreational facilities would be the pool,
clubhouse,
the gym, the clubhouse,
tennis court.
Okay.
However, you cannot prevent an owner from accessing the common area streets, walkways, garages.
Well, that's
okay,
I know, but that's
question.
like, oh, you can't drive anymore in our community, and you're going to have to use a hoverboard to get into your front door because you're not allowed to use your vehicle on our streets.
There was a famous case right here in town, up the 80.
All right, what's the name of the case?
Where it was just a trial court case, and in this case, the board of directors suspended an owner's rights to access their home by virtue of the fact that the board would not shovel, get rid of the snow leading up to their home. They did it everywhere else, but not up to their home.
They left a snow barricade.
Right. And the
Intense board of directors,
court said,
right?
No, you can't do that.
Was there a snow shoveling committee for that? Or how did they go about that?
It was a contract with a company that would come in with the vehicles.
Snowplow?
Snowplow. That's the word I was looking for.
All right.
On a balmy day like today, it's hard to tell,
Jeez. And so they just said, yeah, just pile all the snow up in front of Ed's place because he's in trouble right now.
That's what happened. And the court said no. You could suspend an owner's rights to recreational common area if the owner is in violation. However, you cannot restrict.
You could also do that if they're not paying their dues, right?
You can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
So, and there's probably a time frame
again
that
to be
it falls
clear.
Into.
Recreational facilities, not
only,
not the other areas of the association. What else can we do with an owner in order to try and compel compliance? We have fines. We have suspension of the rights to use the recreational common facilities. You could suspend an owner's rights to vote or be on the board.
Yeah.
To be on the board or to vote. This is as long as your governing documents allow, right? You can only take those remedies as long as the governing documents allow.
You've got to have those written in there clearly.
What's my favorite? My favorite way to compel an owner to comply.
Don't jump out of your seat. What is it?
It is the special individual assessment. And what this is an assessment against the owner, separate from the regular assessments, separate from their special assessment. It's only against that owner for the costs that the association incurred.
Can you go right to the special individual assessment, or there are steps that you have to take?
You're dying to go to the process. We're going to go right to the process because we're short on time. So the process of imposing discipline, fines, special individual assessments on an owner is that you must first hold a hearing.
Oh, and those can be fun, right?
This is a process that is due. The due process is to hold a hearing. And at the hearing, that is where the board of directors will listen to the owner, and they will make sure that everything is clear to the owner of what
they'll define it all.
They'll define it all, and also allows the owner to go ahead and have their say. Exactly.
And they can get probably very testy, some of these hearings. Depending on the personalities involved in the room, you don't think that they get a little bit spicy, argumentative, and intense?
I go to a lot of board hearings. I assist a lot of boards and
it's like having
hearings.
A cup of tea, or?
And it is really a place where, a forum where everyone can be heard and hear. And I will tell you, Jonathan, for the most part, it is a calm event where, as long as no one's raising their voices or interrupting, and if you lay that out at the beginning, no one's going to interrupt or raise their voices.
So you got to set the tone.
Set the tone.
At the hearing.
Exactly. A lot of times owners who are being called into a hearing, they don't understand what the violation is. They don't believe they're in violation. Think about our case study here. So the owner doesn't live at the home. He's renting it out.
And so he has no idea what his tenants are doing.
Well,
but he's going to be responsible.
Right.
He might or might not. Maybe he lives out of state or something, but the rent check shows up on the first. So he has no idea that these 4 fraternity brothers are using his condominium as a nightclub every Saturday night. And so he's going to be penalized. Ultimately, it's the owner. It's not the tenants.
Or maybe the owner's in denial, too. We see that as well. It's like, no way, my tenants, they pay rent every month, on time, the full amount. And so there sometimes is a little bit of denial there.
But it's the owner that's responsible, not the tenants.
So you're underlining the fact that the relationship between the board of directors
is with the owner.
Is with the owner and not with the tenants.
Absolutely.
So in order for the association to enforce, they have the hearing with the owner.
Correct.
Right.
All right. So when we come back for the last segment of the Thanksgiving special,
we're going to make sure that all board members and managers know the procedure to take, comply with all the rules, so that you can solve these violations.
It's going to be a great segment. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fussell. My company, Broadband Agreements, negotiates cable television and broadband right of entry, access, and compensation agreements for your communities. At Broadband Agreements, we offer a free review of all agreements with a signed letter of authorization. Broadband Agreements will improve your community's income and/or savings, or you don't pay us a dime. Visit us at broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. Or call me, Morgan Fussell, directly at 916-939-5026. That's 916-939-5026. Broadband Agreements online at broadbandagreements.com or 916-939-5026.
The challenges presented by today's economy and rebounding housing market is forcing many homeowners association boards of directors to operate their HOAs more like a business. It's a balancing act of trying to stay solvent and still provide homeowners with quality amenities and services. One of the main challenges HOA boards are facing is attempting to recover unpaid HOA fees owed by delinquent homeowners. Collection efforts are often very time-consuming. If you want to get the HOA fees collection monkey off of your back, call ATC Assessment Collection Group. ATC is an attorney-supervised collection company providing collection and foreclosure services to HOAs in both California and Nevada's most recognizable communities. Get back to what you actually volunteered to do as an HOA board member. Effectively oversee your community. Call ATC today at 916-641-1410. That's 916-641-1410. Online at atcacg.com. That's atcacg.com. ATC Assessment Collection Group.
Hi, this is Rick Russo, owner of Russo Insurance Agency and Financial Services. We proudly serve Granite Bay, Roseville, Rockland, Sacramento, Lake Tahoe, and the surrounding areas. At Russo Insurance Agency, we like to say, get to know us before you need us. Our insurance agency is built on relationships and trust. If you want to be certain that your most valuable assets are insured correctly, allow us to give you more than just a 15-minute quote. For all your commercial, home, auto, and life insurance needs, call us today at 916-791-1901. That's 916-791-1901, or online at rickrussoinsurance.com. That's rickrussoinsurance.com. Thank you.
We take time to understand your community's needs.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We solve small problems before they become big ones.
Silver Creek Association Management.
We help make your community a better place to live.
Silver Creek Association Management.
It's what we do, because an association is more than just a bunch of homes. It's a community of people. We work with you to make better communities so homeowners can enjoy better lives.
Silver Creek Association Management. Online at sc-manage.com. That's sc-manage.com.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein, Jonathan Broderick, and Viana Barbu on AM 1380, The Answer.
Okay, so we are talking about our case study. Thank you for hanging in there, listeners. And the factual scenario is an owner has a number of violations, some by his tenant, some by himself. And in order to go ahead and solve these violations, they actually have to be a violation. They have to be a governing document provision that prevents it. And now we're talking about remedies, finishing that up, and we're going to get into the procedures. So with the remedies, the last one we want to talk about is the lawsuit, right? So if an owner doesn't comply, then according to the Davis-Sterling Act and according to most governing documents, the board of directors can have the association go ahead and file a lawsuit.
Fun stuff.
As a initial step to most lawsuits that associations will file against the owner, the association must make a request to the owner to participate in ADR. ADR. Jonathan, what is ADR?
Alternative dispute resolution.
And what are the types of alternative dispute resolution?
Well, there's IDR, right? No. Come on, shake your head. Go. What do you want to know? I'm not the attorney here.
Mediation
and
or
arbitration.
Right. And what are the differences between mediation and arbitration? Mediation is where you have a neutral third party that tries to compel, cajole, convince, right, the two parties to come to an agreement. Arbitration is the rent a judge. That is where a judge will actually impose their decision on the parties, both binding and non-binding. Difference between binding and non-binding.
Frank, our production engineer, is an arbitrator.
He is a man of many trades, exactly. And so an association, if fines don't work, if suspension of rights don't work, if a special individual assessment doesn't work, then they can go to a lawsuit. And typically, in order to go to a lawsuit, the association must ask the owner to participate in a mediation or an arbitration first. Right. What I wanted to do also is to, again, distinguish between the two types of violations, the recurring violation, the parties that happen periodically, versus
repeat offenders
versus the continuing violation. So when you have your
the
fine
ongoing
schedule,
screens that haven't been repaired,
those terrible screens on the owner's home that haven't been repaired, and what the association can do is they can go ahead and impose a continuing fine on owners who have a continuing violation. Every week you fail to correct your continuing violations such as screens, the association is going to impose a fine against you. However, if it's a recurring one, then most likely the law is going to require that you hold another hearing. So here we are at the hearing, though. That's the fun part because that's where we get things solved. What I typically will say when I walk into a hearing assisting a board of directors...
Everyone remain calm.
But I'll give some optimism because you're 90% of the way there, right? You're down to the 10-yard line if you get the owner to show up. You were saying earlier, oh boy, it can be a contentious type of situation.
I think it could be.
But it really rarely is. It rarely is. The owner's there. The owner is knowing that basically they're busted. Okay,
it's like a kangaroo court. Is that what you're saying?
Not at all.
No?
Not at all. Boards of directors do a really good job, and they'll deliberate seriously, and they will make sure that the owner's treated well, and that I think there's the credo that a lot of board members may not think consciously, but subconsciously, an owner today can be a board member tomorrow. And so this person that you are asking them to comply, they could be sitting next to you on
making decisions,
right,
on behalf of
on the
all
board,
of the members
on the board. Right. So in order to hold a hearing, you need to give notice, due notice. And do you know how much notice a association must give to an owner in order to hold a hearing? What the notice
30
is,
days?
It's a letter. It's a letter that the association sends to the owner.
Yeah, how long do they have to give
Right, how
them?
long do you have to give them?
I'm throwing 30 days out
You're
there.
throwing 30 days. You would be incorrect.
What is it, 90?
It is only 10 days.
10 days.
So 10 days, 10-day notice to come to the hearing. And what if an owner says, well, I can't make it? Should the board of directors go ahead and should they
reschedule?
Hold it? They should reschedule, right.
But they can hold the hearing.
They could, but if an owner asks to reschedule, then
it's reasonable to reschedule.
It really makes sense. Remember, you're trying to solve it. You're trying to solve the violation, and boards know this. So the board holds a hearing, and the board of directors, they can, I believe, and I believe that all attorneys that I've talked to in California believe that the board of directors can deliberate in private. They can deliberate in private. They have the hearing with the owner, and then they'll tell the owner.
They'll have the owner step outside or
leave, and the board of directors will send the owner a letter. And
Nice.
the board of directors needs to send the letter within 15 days of the hearing. After
with
15
the result,
days after, right?
Yeah.
With the result.
Man, did I do a good job playing the naive homeowner today?
I think you did. I think you got one
No
out of
questions
six
right.
questions right. The math one was the most difficult one for you today. And me too. I think I said 5 days, 96 hours was.
Yeah.
So now we know that 96 hours is only
Still asleep from
4
the
days.
turkey. I am. And plus Frank's got the Ohio State-Michigan game on, so it's kind of been distracting us. Well, December's here, right?
Right. So that wraps it up. That's about enforcing against violating owners, and that lays it out. And
All kinds
it's
of
not
stuff.
easy, but it's worthwhile to do because here's something that we want to mention, and that is if the association does not enforce their governing documents and particular violations.
Association gone wild.
Right. And the association tries to go ahead and enforce those violations at a later time, even though they didn't do it in the past. What do you think?
Nothing.
They're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
The court, if they go to court, the judge could say, you waived your rights. You are, quote unquote, stopped from enforcing these violations because you didn't do it in the past. You misled the owners.
Got to stay consistent. Hey, thanks for joining us this Saturday morning for the HOA Brunch. Next time we come back will be next Saturday, but it'll be December. Almost Christmas is coming.
Do you know who our guest will be?
Morgan Fussell.
Morgan Fussell. Thank you, listeners. See you next week.